There are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be, and if they are, they better stop now. Should just write it down here. President Donald J. Trump. Yeah, it doesn't sound like they had the same idea of what the ceasefire means. All right. Iran is doing a very poor job. It's honorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. That's not the agreement we have. Nope. Turned around. Like, this is the issue. Either there is a miscommunication between the US and the regime in Iran, or the regime in Iran has fractured and trying to get some kind of agreement with them as a whole may not be possible at this point. Because once you start to get fractured, you're going to get the hard line that is just going to keep the strait closed no matter what. And if one of them gets into, like, because when it fractures, you have multiple people that take different positions of power, with no one really over them. So once one of those hardliners is at the top, takes takes one group with a couple of drones and a radio signal, be like, we will shoot at anyone who goes through the strait. Boom, the strait's closed. And there's not a whole lot you can do that with that. I mean, I want the ceasefire to be successful. I do not see it being successful. I think I had a chart of it went down. I want, give me just a month. Longer than that now. See, high drop, and then it's starting to climb again as the ceasefire doesn't appear to be holding. Because, like, the number one condition U.S. ceasefire is that the strait is open. That is the prime directive. And if that does not happen, I imagine they'll just go right back to shooting bombs at them, dropping bombs on them. And that does not look like it's happened. Let's see what else they say. Breaking. Okay, do I read this from here? And I might as well read his rather than what this person. The Wall Street Journal, one of the worst and most inaccurate editorial boards in the world. So just keep attacking the press, Stated that I declared premature victory in Iran. Actually, it is a victory, and there's nothing premature about it. Because of me, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. And very quickly, I mean, like, I agree, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. And very quickly, you'll see oil start flowing. I agree, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. I like that. I don't think you'll see oil flowing very, like, either Iran has fractured and you have hardliners that will not let the strait open, positions of power, or, I mean, the best case scenario is that the ceasefire was so rushed that both sides didn't get the same version of the ceasefire as they were hammering the deal out. I mean, that would be the best case scenario because then you could still negotiate for the strait to be open. But I don't know. Anyway, let's finish up. Very quickly, you'll see oil start flowing. That's questionable, with or without the help of Iran. And to me, it makes no difference either way. The Wall Street Journal will, as usual, live to eat their words. They are always quick to criticize, but never to admit when they're wrong, which is most of the time. Continuous little jabs. President Donald J. Trump. Like, I don't know. I'm hopeful for the ceasefire. The video. Oh, it's just showing nothing. Very few are actually going through. And most of them are still stuck. So green are full, I'm assuming, and red are empty. The red ones are coming back for a refill. We're all stuck on this side. Yeah, it's crazy how much of the world supply of oil goes through this one strait. That is all Iran. And with the range of their drones, I mean, keeping this open is going to be hard. Let's keep going. There are reports that Iran is charging fees. He actually has.
Mr. President, are you allowed to? Mr. President,
I'm not hearing it. That's why.
Mr. President, are you allowed to, or are you willing to end this conflict with Iran charging tolls for passage through the strait?
Us charging tolls?
Iran.
What about us charging tolls?
Is that something you're considering?
I'd rather do that than let them have them, right? Why shouldn't we? We're the winner. We won, okay? They are military.
I mean, the objectives for Iran's victory very different from the US's. If the regime survives, then they win. That is their victory condition. Survival and still being in power at the end of this conflict. The US, like, to be victorious, you need to stop that. You need to change the regime. As far as I understand, the person currently, if it's one person at all anymore, or if it's fractured in multiple regimes, is more hardline than the guy they got rid of. I don't know, claiming victory. The state of the war right now is not a victory. Like, you either need to use this pressure for a negotiation, get what you want, or gotta finish off the regime. And I have no idea how you could go about doing that. Freaking 4 hours ago. Like, hasn't NATO basically always been saying if they haven't committed to actually sending ships or something, then they're not verbally agreeing and actually sending things are very different. See what you say.
Logistics that came time to provide the logistical and other support the United States needed in Iran, some allies were a bit slow, to say the least. In fairness, they were also a bit surprised. To maintain the element of surprise for the initial strikes, President Trump opted not to inform allies ahead of time, and I understand that.
So the White House now looking at possible punishments for some NATO allies, according to a piece in the Wall Street Journal today. Quote,
Like, this tack on NATO, like, NATO was a defensive alliance, basically developed to contain Russia. The only time Article 5's been used was by the U.S. when they attacked on 9/11. But the U.S., like, this was an offensive action. I don't know. Drawing all of NATO into this war, it looks like a quagmire. Like, if Donald Trump pulls out now and leaves the Strait of Hormuz to Iran, charging tolls, then in my opinion, they'll have lost the war. There needed to be something done about Iran. I don't know if this was it. And I liked Obama's deal. I don't know. Yeah, let me see if I can. I don't want to use this one because we're still. my plan to go through them all failed immediately. Why does Trump keep saying that the Obama deal with Iran to prevent them from having nuclear weapons was a terrible deal? Was it a terrible deal? Obama plan? The Obama deal. Having nuclear weapons was a terrible deal. See what it. Here. Trump, open the Strait of Hormuz. Oh, there you go. Ooh, okay, this might be. There are reports there. Okay,
Going on, we're watching it by the hour. So too is the White House, and Connor Hansen has an update from the North Lawn there. And Connor, good morning to you.
Bill, good morning. Only a handful of ships have been able to pass through the Strait of Hormuz since the ceasefire began. And
yeah, and isn't there there are hundreds sitting on either side? That's not an increase.
Questions over whether the strait is actually open could test this already fragile agreement. So far, Iran has maintained its tight grip on the vital shipping lane, reportedly telling mediators it will limit traffic to roughly a dozen ships per day. And those ships...
Wait, what?
Traffic to roughly a dozen ships
Who's
per
telling
day
them that?
on the vital shipping lane, reportedly telling mediators fragile agreement. So far, Iran has maintained its tight grip on the vital shipping lane, reportedly telling mediators it will limit traffic to roughly a...
That is not the same ceasefire that Trump agreed to. Something tells me the ceasefire is doomed.
Dozen ships per day, and those ships could have to pay tolls in...
Because it's like the usual traffic is like 100 and something. So there's probably a couple hundred built up on either side. Dozen a day, that doesn't change anything.
Coordinate with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Only 5 ships passed through the strait yesterday, according to the firm Kepler, and data from maritime traffic shows not all of them were carried.
You can see the ones that turn their transponders off as they just blink in when they got to the other side.
And crude oil.
I actually think that we are seeing signs that the Straits is starting to reopen. I think you guys have probably seen.
Where? These signs? I'm not seeing these signs. I am seeing that the Iran did not agree to the same ceasefire you agreed to.
Oil prices have come down, so I think the oil markets, the gas market.
And if it doesn't open, oil prices will right back up.
Are seeing the same thing.
They're incredibly reactionary.
Oil prices have ticked up slightly after that steep drop following the ceasefire announcement.
That's exactly what we're seeing here. Steep drop and then tick up. It holds steady for these two. But that's April 10th, so put a point in for tomorrow. I imagine the future is closed.
For now, they're hovering below $100 a barrel. U.S. crude exports are expected to surge this month because of the limited supply from the Middle East, and gas prices remain high, but the White House expects the spike to be temporary.
And so our expectation is that you get those straits open, then things can return to normal very, very soon. And that's what future markets expect as well. If you look at them, they've got oil a month from now.
Well, that's what they expect because that's what you told them. Told them there's a ceasefire and that Iran has agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And we've just heard that Iran has not agreed. They've agreed to let like 12 ships a day through, which is not an open strait.
Now $20, $30 below what oil at a spot price is. And that's because they expect that we can get things going again relatively quickly.
And it's safe to say the Strait of Hormuz will be a major topic during in-person negotiations. Vice President Vance scheduled to travel to Pakistan for this weekend. Bill.
This weekend. Is it going to last that long? So I like that, but these are all like Fox News and Donald Trump get like now how do I search Iran? Oh, that one's easier. Just the okay. Which grocery stores? Israel launches fresh strikes on Lebanon. These are not in order. How do I get? All right, Trump was gaslighting with threats to destroy. Top source. How old is that? 11 hours. Did the Iran war change anything? It's like a document. Just fresh strikes in Lebanon. But the U.S.-Iran ceasefire. That I want the AI to be able to grab that.
A ceasefire.
So let's watch this. Talking. Okay. Why does Trump keep saying that the Obama deal with Iran to prevent them from having a nuclear weapon was a terrible deal? Was it a terrible deal? Trump calls the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or Obama deal, a terrible deal primarily because he views it as a one-sided, temporary arrangement that enriched and emboldened the Iran regime without permanently blocking its path to nuclear weapons for addressing its border threats. His May 8th, 2018 withdrawal announcement, Trump stated that the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action enriched the Iranian regime and enabled its malign behavior, while at best delaying its ability to pursue nuclear weapons and allowing it to preserve nuclear research and development. He and his administration argued it failed to protect U.S. national security. Trump was repeatedly called it the worst deal ever for these reasons, and he continues to cite it as an example of weak, flawed diplomacy that rewarded bad actors. Okay. Core terms of the deal: limiting uranium enrichment to 3.65. I mean, that right there is what you need. That's the civilian level use in like a nuclear reactor, nuclear energy. Right now they have 60%. So keeping them to 3.67 means keep them in the civilian range. Cap its stockpile. I mean, that's great. Reduce active centrifuges. Redesign Iraq heavy water reactor and accept IAEA monitoring and verification. This extended Iran's breakout time to produce enough weapons-grade uranium for one bomb, a few months pre-deal to about 1 year for the first decade. IAEA reports confirm Iran complied with these nuclear limits until after the U.S. withdrawal. I mean, like, something tells me, like, the current deal is not as good as this deal. All right, let's see. Trump's and critics' main objections. Trump critique focus on structural flaws, not just short-term compliance. Sunset clause made it temporary. It's more temporary if you destroy it. Many key restrictions expired after 10 to 15 years. Doesn't that just mean you go and renegotiate them? Like, that, at least that's kicking the can 10 to 15 years down the road, where they do not have the capacity to make a nuclear bomb. After that, Iran could legally scale up its industrial enrichment levels. Bomb them then. If they do that. Shrinking breakout time dramatically, critics called this kicking the can down the road. Pause, not a permanent block. Even some deal supporters and later acknowledged this as a weakness needing fixes. Absolutely. I don't think you wait until this expires, then you'd blow up the deal. Don't blow the deal up before these expire. Doesn't make sense. Narrow scope, ignored mission, missiles, and terrorism. Now, I agree with that. The deal covered only the nuclear program. It did nothing to curb the ballistic missile development, which, I mean, we're seeing how much damage they're doing with their ballistic missiles they've been allowed to develop, as not included. Or its support for proxies. I mean, back when the deal was signed, I didn't even know the proxies were going to be a big thing. Hezbollah, Houthis, militias in Iraq, Syria. That is something that did have to be dealt with. Still does. Iran ramped up these activities using sanctions relief funds. Oh, so there's not going to be an easy answer, is there? The deal had good things, but it also definitely had issues. Sanctions release funded malign behavior. Iran gained access to a lot of money, assets, and revenue. Critics argue this propped up the regime, funded proxies and missiles, and helped it survive domestic unrest without requiring change. Another very valid point. Verification and infrastructure issues. Iran kept its nuclear know-how and facilities. Some inspections had delay/notice periods. Iran had a history of covert work and deception pre-deal. The JCPOA didn't dismantle the program, just constrained it. Supporters countered that it was the best realistic compromise. It variably slowed the program. Broader issues could be handled separately. They noted IAEA confirmations of compliance and argued withdrawal removed leverage, leading to escalation. Was it actually a terrible deal? Evidence-based assessment. It was flawed in ways that made it a poor long-term solution for preventing nuclear Iran or curbing regional threats, aligning with Trump's core critique. Here's why, based on it delayed but didn't prevent nuclear progress. That regional behavior worsened with the money. Sanction relief didn't moderate Iran, it continued proxy funding and missile tests. When they got sanctions relief, they put it more into their military, funding terrorism. Sanctions after withdrawal hurt Iran's economy but didn't stop nuclear proxy war, though they did limit resources somewhat. Counterfactual under the deal, even if the US had stayed in, many restrictions would have expired around now. Iran would likely be in a similar position now. More money and legitimacy. Deal legitimized Iran's right to enrich, which the US had long opposed. Not all bad. It did buy 3 to 4 years of verifiably constrained national buy-in. Withdrawal isolated the US somewhat from allies who tried to preserve the deal via workarounds. Objectively, the JCPOA was not a durable fix for the Iran nuclear threat. It was a short-term tactical delay that traded immediate sanctions relief for future risks. Iran's program today is far more advanced than in 2015. The regime's non-nuclear aggression persisted. Trump's terrible deal label reflects real design flaws that critics accurately flagged from the start. Whether a better deal was achieved is debatable. The evidence shows it didn't solve the problem long term. Iran remains a threshold nuclear state pursuing regional dominance, regardless of the deal's status. Can't lean back or the mic stops picking me up. So, it was a terrible deal. It bought a couple of years, 3 to 4 years of verifiably constrained. But he's right. Many of it was saying that it wasn't a long-term, wasn't a solution to the problem. And staying in the deal for longer would have likely just put them in a better situation, right? Okay, well. So it had its upsides, but not a long-term fix. And that has somehow led to a war to stop them from developing a nuclear weapon. I mean, I do like Trump's rhetoric of they will not have a bomb. That is something I agree with. They should not be allowed to have a nuclear bomb. Not while they're funding terrorism around the world. Hey, buddy. Why do I not see that? Oh, there it is. Kick. Hey. Doing good. How are you? Any comments about what we're talking about? Trump got rid of the Obama deal. I mean, it definitely wasn't a long-term plan. Ah, nothing's easy to solve, is it? Oh, I'm from Canada. So a lot of that will have a Canadian view on it. And I go to the CBC to find things. Okay, here's what we know about the US Iranian ceasefire. Where are you from? Yeah, those are showing up on stream. He's got that part right. Oh, you're from the US. What did you think about Trump blowing up the Iran, the Obama deal with Iran to stop them? This one, 4 terms of the deal. Yeah, I have multiple chat things. One way behind the other one. Gotta use this one. Anyway, you can take your time if you want to talk about it. I'm gonna start this here. How long ago is this? 1 day.
Fire between the U.S. and Iran.
You are streaming content at the moment. Yes. Yes, I am. I am streaming on YouTube, Kick, and Twitch. Kick. Hey, 2 viewers on Kick. All right. See what's going on with the ceasefire.
Appears shaky after last night's 11th hour agreement. Earlier today, U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said America is ready to restart the war, quote.
Did I not update my stream information? I was like, what are you trying to say there? Oh, it shows that I'm still in League of Legends. Yeah. Let's get that. Probably this one. Here. Just chatting. Kick works the same way, right? Yeah. Gotta go. Politics, say. Should Your name. My name's Alex. I go by Alovation on all of the streaming sites, though. Okay, that worked.
A ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran appears shaky after last night's 11th hour agreement. Earlier today, U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said America is ready to restart the war, quote, at a moment's notice.
It takes time sometimes for ceasefires to take hold. We're watching it.
So they're kind of waiting it out to see if like they've made. I assume this is why Trump keeps posting about the Strait of Hormuz being open is crucial to the ceasefire. And if they don't do that, then the ceasefire is going to fall through, and it's probably going to be back to war. But they're trying to push that to see if they'll accept that term while they continue the peace talks.
We're prepared.
State-controlled media in Iran was filled with images of people celebrating long into the night following news of the ceasefire, but there is cautious optimism in other parts of the Middle East. Both Kuwait and Qatar have reported Iranian attacks since the truce was announced.
Like, my understanding, the internet is still basically cut off. So the images you see are what they allow you to see. This is Iranian regime propaganda. And that is all you'll see coming out of Iran. Let me make sure of that. Is the internet still down in Iran? Just make sure. Yes, the internet remains severely restricted. It's not completely down for all users in the sense of zero connectivity everywhere, but it's under a near total government-imposed nationwide blackout. Everything you're going to see from there, you're seeing it because the regime wants you to see it.
And today, Israel launched its heaviest attacks of the war against what it says are Hezbollah targets.
So in Lebanon, they still have access, they still have reporters there. You still get proper coverage. Not like in Iran.
Non-Civil Defense Service says those strikes killed 254 people. That would be the highest single-day death toll in the Israel-Hezbollah war. Another 1,100 people were wounded in these strikes. Iran says it closed the Strait of Hormuz again in response to those attacks.
From my understanding, the Strait of Hormuz was never really open. So, like, can you close again something that hadn't been opened? It looks like they're just trying to find an excuse to not open the strait.
And journalist Nick Harper is watching the reaction from the United States and tell us what they're saying in Washington about the state of the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, Ian, at the end of the first full day of this ceasefire, the US and Iran seem to be completely at odds. And part of the problem is that their understanding, their interpretation of the situation and how the Strait of Hormuz is going forward is very contrasted. Now, bear in mind, earlier...
I like the map. These are basically all the areas involved. We got the strait over here. Given the world so many issues. All the oil from like Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all the oil and gas, the UAE, all comes through. Strait. This is one of the most oil and gas rich regions in the world. I understand that Saudi Arabia has pipelines and they're trying to ship it to the other side. They can't move anywhere near capacity. For a lot of them, like Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, this is their only way. Oil out. And over here we have Israel, Lebanon. This is the other column, southern Lebanon. So Iran, proxy, Hezbollah, Lebanon, primarily focused in southern Lebanon, border here. That's the other conflict zone. Actually, from my understanding, Israel has moved actual troops in, seeing ground warfare. There was in the Gaza Strip.
On, the Iranians were saying that the strait was closed, and there also was reporting that they were threatening to fire on any ships bypassing the Strait of Hormuz without permission. If you listen to the White House, though, the interpretation of this...
I wonder, like, possible? UAE has a port here. They can just ship oil across. The Strait of Hormuz is such a problem. Can't you just build a large pipeline? I know that would cost. It costs a lot, and you did unless you keep the strait closed. I hear, my understanding, Mexico is doing something like this with transport containers, where as the Panama Canal is having issues, Mexico has a port, quickly offloads to a train, which takes you across and onloads to it. That's becoming more competitive because of the situation in Panama.
To the White House, though, the interpretation of this situation, what is currently ongoing, is the polar opposite. The White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, was asked about this earlier. She said that the Strait of Hormuz was open. She said that any reporting of it being closed was simply false.
I mean, like, you shouldn't say it's open until ships move through it. That's just trying to jump ahead of the story, and now you look like an idiot because it appears to not be open.
And she also said that there had been an uptick in traffic, the number of ships bypassing that channel. Let's listen to what else she had to say when she was asked about it by reporters earlier.
Again, this is a case of what they're saying publicly is different privately. We have seen an uptick of traffic in the Strait today, and I will reiterate the president's expectation and demand that the Strait of Hormuz is reopened immediately, quickly, and safely. That is his expectation, and it has been relayed to him.
So she didn't say it is open. She said it's the expectation that it's open. So she's explaining the ceasefire from the American side.
Privately, that is what's taking place, and these reports publicly are false.
And Donald Trump has also been speaking about the Strait of Hormuz. He seems to view it as a business opportunity. He said that there was big money to be made, and he talked about this idea that hasn't been discussed so far of a, in his words, joint venture with the Iranians, potentially splitting this toll money that up until now the Iranians have been imposing on ships.
What? Why? Like, a toll being there is fundamentally worse than what we have. And now the Americans are saying that they're going to be part of the toll? show you. Unfortunately, I don't actually have an Instagram set up right now. That's one of the things I was going to do soon. Instagram, X, and TikTok. Gotta get a shorts system set up.
$1 million price tag. Donald Trump wants a piece of that pie, suggesting that potentially, if there is a toll, the United States would like to collect some of it as well. Ian?
And what are the next steps for the United States in Iran?
Well, Donald Trump certainly seems to suggest that the United States will be around for some time. He said that the US would be just hanging around in order to make sure that everything goes well. He also spoke about the Iran.
So it sounds like JD Vance is having a meeting with them on this weekend. And we're not gonna see a change in the situation until then. Because they were meeting with Pakistan or somewhere.
Uranium, said the US would be digging it up. That uranium that he said was buried deep underground as a result of US airstrikes. And the US Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has also suggested that US troops would remain in the region. But will any of this be possible? Because there is this confusion and contrasting views. We heard from the Vice President, JD Vance, earlier, and he said that simply at this stage, there seemed to be a misunderstanding about how things were being interpreted.
I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states.
So he thinks, like they did state this, that they were closing the Strait of Hormuz because of the fighting in Lebanon. But the Strait of Hormuz also had never been opened, so not sure if that's just an excuse they're making up because they want to keep it closed and keep essentially the oil price ramping up. While not getting bombed. Like delay tactics and coming to the table for negotiations and using that as a delay, something they're fabulous at, something they did for years. Trump mentioned that multiple times, that every time they'd come to the table and they came to the table in bad faith. So this could just be another bad faith negotiation where they're buying time because of the oil price. Because this is a future, so a prediction of oil price. So if the ceasefire doesn't hold, then that dip is just another dip and it continues that upward climb. See, continue and go back up higher. That just applies more pressure to the global economy. The longer you let them continue to do that, the higher you'll let this get before you do eventually, like, if you bomb them for long enough, will eventually be the regime. But how high that's got to go, I don't even know. We haven't seen the real kick in oil price yet. Where was I?
Now, that said, the Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful.
So the vice president said,
check themselves, but not end the conflict.
suggesting that Iran is quite simply confused about the terms of this ceasefire. So the next question is, will we even get to the beginning of the talks? The first round due to begin on Saturday in Islamabad. At this stage,
Islamabad, Saturday.
with the Iranians saying that the US has violated multiple terms of the agreement, it may be a little difficult to even get to the point where they'll be sitting down to discuss next steps. Ian?
Journalist Nick Harper in Washington. Thank you. Officials in Lebanon say Israeli airstrikes today killed 200.
Look at this guy just walking away.
Say
like,
Israeli
oh, this is
airstrikes
just a-
today
Yeah, this
killed
happens. I'll put my phone up,
254
take a
people.
picture.
That is the highest single-day death toll yet in the Israel-Hezbollah war. Iran says it has now closed the Strait of Hormuz in response. This comes after Iran's 11th-hour deal with the United States.
I don't know if you close something that was never open.
States and Israel. The U.S.
Closed
says
for
it
a long
expects
time.
to see the strait reopen. Well, to weigh in on the implications of all of this, let's turn now to Cameron Bukhari, a senior resident fellow with the Middle East Policy Council in Washington. He is in Purcellville, Virginia. Cameron, 24 hours ago, we were live on this program, wondering if we were going to be reporting on a countdown to Trump's threat to wipe out an entire civilization. But then, as I mentioned, that 11th hour agreement between Iran, Israel, and the United States. How do you feel about the state of that promised ceasefire as of right now?
Like, attacking the civilian infrastructure is not the way to go about it. Like, I don't know how you go and you force the regime into a ceasefire or to destroy them, but targeting power plants, that's just going to cause a lot of unnecessary problems. Keep it to military target. I mean, I know Iran certainly isn't. They're just firing rockets at everyone.
So thanks for having me on, Ian. Look, there are a couple of things. Number one is anytime you reach a ceasefire, in the early days, it's very fragile. There are always violations by one side or another. And in this case, we're dealing with a really complicated situation. So you have the US-Iranian conflict, and then you also have the Israel-Iranian conflict. Now, there's a lot of convergence between Washington and Jerusalem, but there are also differences in how Israel and the United States look at the conflict. So this is a complicated situation. And then, of course, the fact that Pakistan is being used as a conduit for these negotiations adds a further layer of complexity. And so by the time, you get everybody on the same page, it's not really clear that, everybody agrees with everything. So I look at this as sort of, part of the process.
Kind of curious about Israel's thinking in launching an attack with what we're told is the largest loss of life during their incursion, or whatever you want to call it, in Lebanon against Hezbollah, which, I mean, not surprisingly, has put pressure on this ceasefire. What do you think Israel's strategy is here?
Well, look, I mean, I think from an Israeli point of view, there is the war with Iran. But from an Israeli point of view, Hezbollah is more closer to home and has far greater ability to strike. And now, since 2024, Israel has significantly weakened Hezbollah, and it's trying to wrap that up, that whole process, trying to take it to a logical conclusion, but it faces constraints because
So they're trying to remove Hezbollah from. So, from my understanding, Hezbollah is like faction in Lebanon. They're powerful military faction, primarily resides within the southern part of Israel. But when you look at like their military power, like it was pretty comparable to Lebanon's standing military. So a fight between Lebanon and Hezbollah would be a civil war that would be absolutely devastating. Which is why the Lebanese army is kind of staying out of this. And that, what I understand, and it's Hezbollah and Israel fighting. But like Hezbollah uses the same tactics Hamas uses, put their buildings into schools and under hospitals. So that'll get messy if that continues. I don't know if Israel's going to be able to wrap that up in a short time frame.
The United States is trying to reach an understanding, a settlement with Iran. Iran is tied to Hezbollah. So this is the complexity here, that interests always don't converge, they diverge. And then if you look at what the Iranian situation is, they're in a difficult position. On one hand, they can't be seen as throwing their premier proxy, Hezbollah, under the bus. But if they try to say, hey, this ceasefire is off, then they risk further destruction of their infrastructure and whatnot. I mean, quite frankly, they came to the table yesterday because obviously the threat from the president of the United States, and they can't assume he's not going to follow through with it.
You've explained this so clearly, the complexity of what's going on right now with Iran, Israel, and the United States. And so that complexity is, kind of the backdrop for the days leading up to what are supposed to be negotiations on Saturday. Do you have any sense of confidence of whether those negotiations will even begin on Saturday?
Great question. So there are two ways to look at it. There's one way is that, hey, these ceasefire violations are adding to the fragility of the situation. And so it's not beyond the realm of possibility or even probability that they decide that, hey, we don't want to meet just yet. Okay. But at the same time, another way of looking at it is, what is the priority? What is the imperative of the Iranians? At some point, as I was saying earlier, they have to sort of decide, do they want to go to war again and risk further degradation of their infrastructure? See, one of the things that to bear in mind from an Iranian point of view is they can take the destruction of their offensive capabilities and live with it. What they can't live with is if infrastructure is struck, that creates internal social economic chaos, and that threatens the regime. That's something that's a red line. When all is said and done, they want to get to the other side.
So that's why he's doing it. Say that again.
Thing that's a red line. When structure is struck, that they can take the destruction of their offensive capabilities and live with it. What they can't live with is if infrastructure is struck, that creates internal social economic chaos, and that threatens the regime.
So that's why Trump is stating that he'll target power plants, because that's what threatens the actual regime. Because if he targets infrastructure, they'll lose control of the populace. I mean, his threats make more sense.
That's something
now.
that's a red line. When all is said and done, they want to get to the other side of this more or less intact. And so there's this sort of difficult decision making, but I think that the imperative will constrain Iran from completely calling off these talks.
So nice to have.
I think right now, if it's like the ceasefire negotiations drag on, it favors Iran. Because the longer they can drag on peace negotiations, the higher they can make this go. More pressure that'll add to the US. All right. I wanted to do one more question and then we're going to move on. Who is currently leading Iran? Who is Trump talking to in his negotiations? And do they have full control over the Iran regime? Yeah, like it says Ayatollah al-Khamenei, but like from my understanding, we haven't seen him at all. Could just be a figurehead that already died in the first bombing. They're just using the figurehead to try and acquire control. As of April 9th through 10th, 2016, Iran is formerly led by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the late, the last guy, who was selected by the Assembly of Experts on March 8th or 9th, 2006. Al-Khamenei was assassinated. Okay. Mojtaba has issued public statements, but he has not appeared in public or on video much. Has he appeared at all? Taking office. Given the speculation he was wounded in the strikes. Trump is negotiating directly or through channel contacts primarily with Mohammed Bajir. I'm not going to say their name. I'll just highlight them. The hardline speaker of Iran's parliament. Okay, so they're negotiating with the speaker of their parliament. Like that. I mean, it's not negotiating with the guy, but I mean, that's about as high as you can get, right? Unless you talk to the guy that has not made public appearances. Taba. Trump has publicly confirmed his envoys are talking to a senior Iranian official or top person he described as the most respected leader. Multiple U.S., Israel, and media reports identify this as Jalifba, a former IRGC commander and pragmatic hardliner. Contacts have occurred via mediators, planned or ongoing talks in Islamabad, Pakistan, tied to a fragile 2-week ceasefire agreement. Okay. Current regime retains effective control of Iran's core institutions, does not have the same full pre-war grip. US/Israel strikes explicitly aim at the regime change and decapitated much of the old leadership. Quick secession process installed Mojtaba, prevented total collapse. Pro-regime rallies continue. The IRGC and security forces remain loyal. State apparatus functions. However, the war has shifted real power further towards the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards, decimated clerical and political ranks, left Mojtaba low profile. So it's reduced the power of the guy he's talking to. Analysts describe a more militarized, younger, hardline leadership with reduced legitimacy and capacity. No popular uprising or full overthrow has occurred, but the regime is weakened, more insular, and operating under wartime conditions. In short, Mojtaba Kahami is the top leader on paper. Galifbaf is the regime's main point of contact with Trump's team. The Islamic Republic survives battered. More IRGC dominated and far from unchallenged full control. Ceasefire and Islamabad talks are the immediate focus, though volatiles and distrust are already being reported on both sides. The situation remains fluid. Okay. Well, I'm going to be moving on.